It is 1 o'clock in the morning on October 23rd, 1944. 32 Japanese warships are moving north through the darkness of the South China Sea. 5 battleships, 10 heavy cruisers, 15 destroyers. Moving in columns at 16 knots, their bow waves throwing pale, cold fire, bioluminescence churned up from the tropical deep, against hulls of grey steel. At the head of the port column, a heavy cruiser named Atago carries the flag of Vice Admiral Takao Kurita, the man commanding what is left of the Imperial Japanese Navy's surface strength. Behind Atago, steaming safely in line, are Yamato and Musashi, 2 of the largest warships ever built by any nation, each displacing more than 60,000 tons, their 16-inch gun turrets rising against the night sky like small fortress towers. This fleet is the last one. The Japanese Navy will not be able to assemble another like it. Somewhere in that formation, a radio operator aboard Yamato has just transcribed an intercepted American signal. It reads that American submarines are tracking the fleet. The report reaches Admiral Kurita. He reads it. He does not change course. He does not order screening destroyers forward to sweep ahead of his cruiser columns. He does nothing with the information at all. What was he thinking? Overconfidence? Fatalism? The cold arithmetic of a man who has fought for 3 years and understands that somewhere in every ocean there are always submarines, and that worrying about them is like worrying about the sea itself. We cannot know. His post-war interrogations were sparse. He left no diary. We have only what he did, and what he did not do. 150 miles to the south, a radar screen aboard a submerged American submarine shows a contact at the southern entrance to Palawan Passage. The operator stares at it. It looks at first like a rain squall. Then it resolves. It is not a rain squall. He calls the captain. By October 1944, the Imperial Japanese Navy has been systematically broken. At Midway, it lost 4 fleet carriers and the cream of its naval aviation. At the Philippine Sea the following June, it lost 3 more and any realistic chance of rebuilding. What remains are the surface ships, the cruisers, the destroyers, the 2 super battleships. And these are being massed for one final operation designed not to win the war, but to prevent its immediate loss. The operation is called Shogo 1. Its target is the American invasion fleet at Leyte Gulf in the central Philippines. The Philippines are not a strategic afterthought. They are the spine of Japan's entire supply chain. Every tanker from the Dutch East Indies oil fields that keeps Japan's war economy running has to pass through Philippine waters. If the Philippines fall, that chain is cut. The home islands starve. The warships that survive, sitting on empty fuel tanks in Japanese ports, become monuments. Kurita's center force is the killing blow. 5 battleships, 10 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers, 15 destroyers, based near Singapore because American submarines have already reduced the Japanese home island's fuel reserves to a trickle, and the fleet must stay close to its supply. This is not a fleet sent to fight on equal terms. This is an empire's last throw of the dice, and it is sailing straight into Palawan Passage. 2 American submarines are waiting, though at this hour, neither crew yet knows exactly what they are waiting for. USS Darter is a Gato-class fleet submarine, 311 feet long, built in Groton, Connecticut, commissioned in September 1943. She carries 24 torpedoes in 10 tubes, 6 forward, 4 aft, and a mechanical brain called the target data computer that processes bearing rates, ranges, and speeds into firing solutions. Her captain is Commander David Haywood McClintock, 32 years old. He spent the earliest and most dangerous years of Pacific submarine warfare attacking Japanese warships with torpedoes that regularly refused to detonate, and the admirals who wouldn't hear complaints about them. He earned a Silver Star attacking a Japanese cruiser at close range in a night surface engagement. His crew, by every account, loved him. He had a dry wit and steady nerves, and they had learned the difference between the two. USS Dace is his partner, same class, same armament, commanded by Commander Bladen Claggett, and together the two boats form a wolfpack, with McClintock holding tactical control. They are patrolling Palawan Passage, a deep water channel 35 to 40 miles wide, running between the island of Palawan to the east and the South China Sea to the west. The western edge of that channel is marked on every reliable nautical chart with a phrase that appears more than once and is never meant as poetry. The charts call it dangerous ground. It is an expanse of uncharted coral reefs and shoal water running for hundreds of miles, without reliable soundings, without adequate surveys. A maze of reef and reef shadow that has been claiming ships since before the age of steam. It is the only navigational hazard in this stretch of ocean the Japanese haven't put on anyone's chart with any precision. The name will matter before this story is over. At 1:16 on October 23rd, the blip on Data's radar resolves. The operator's first instinct is a rain squall, a common return in tropical waters, familiar enough that a good operator knows what it looks like. This doesn't look like that. The return is too solid, too structured, and it is moving north at a speed that rain squalls do not move. McClintock is called to the conning tower. Within minutes, the picture is unmistakable. Dozens of contacts, a formation the size of a small city stretching across the southern mouth of Palawan Passage. The Japanese fleet, which American naval intelligence had completely lost track of for several days, has just announced itself on a radar screen aboard a 311-foot submarine. Data immediately transmits her contact report to Allied Command. The flash reaches headquarters within the hour and triggers responses across the entire Pacific theater. Naval historian Samuel Eliot Morrison will later call those transmissions the most significant reports of the Pacific War. The irony is that McClintock's report has the fleet's composition wrong. He doesn't yet know precisely what he is looking at. It doesn't matter. The intelligence is imprecise in its particulars and correct in every way that counts. But acting takes time. And Data and Dace are already moving. For 5 hours, both submarines run at full surface speed, chasing the formation from behind, cutting a diagonal course to get ahead of it. 5 hours of engines at maximum revolutions, spray over the bridge, the eastern sky beginning its slow conversion from black to purple to gray. They have to be ahead of the fleet before first light. Once submerged, they can make barely 8 knots. The Japanese are making 16. The window is closing with every mile. What Data's radio room is broadcasting during those 5 hours, position updates, course corrections, speed estimates, is being intercepted aboard Yamato. The contact report reaches Kurita for the second time. This time it is not an ambiguous intercept. This is an American submarine transmitting in real time, which means an American submarine is very close. The screening destroyers remain in their columns. The fleet does not slow. The course does not change. At 4:30, Data is ahead of the Japanese port column. Dace is positioned against the starboard. Both submarines dive. The crews go to battle stations. The TDC operators begin asking for range. In the growing light of nautical dawn, enormous silhouettes are beginning to separate from the horizon. Capital ships moving in formation at 60 knots, completely unaware. At 5:24, McClintock fires. 6 torpedoes leave Data's forward tubes at near point-blank range, aimed at the lead ship of the port column. That ship is Atago, the flagship of Japan's center force. She is 668 feet long, 10 8-inch guns, 889 men, Takao Kurita on her flag bridge. 4 torpedoes find her. Aboard Atago, a sailor named Matsuyoshi Tsuchiya is resting near the ship's shrine on the middle deck. He is 24 years old. He will live to be 101, and when interviewers find him in 2022, one of the last surviving combatants of the entire Battle of Leyte Gulf. His account is brief. No one could say a word. he says. Young soldiers running around, jumping into the sea. The order to abandon ship comes within minutes. Kurita descends the gangway ladder. Men go over the side. 600 meters astern, aboard the heavy cruiser Takao, a sailor named Nakagawa watches from his deck. In the pitch blackness, he will recall, a big red flame rose up, and I could clearly see that the Atago had been hit. He watches the flame and does not yet know that 2 more torpedoes from Darter's stern tubes are already in the water, heading for him. Inside Darter's hull, 8 minutes after the hits on Atago, the crew hears the ship breaking apart through the pressure hull itself. A grinding, cracking report transmitted through seawater and steel. Atago capsizes at 5:53, 18 minutes after she was hit. She takes 360 men to the bottom with her, including her captain. Kurita is in the water. The Japanese formation does what doctrine demands. It turns away from the attack, wheeling to starboard to present the smallest possible silhouette to the threat on its port side. Standard anti-submarine maneuvering. Every officer in the fleet is following exactly the correct procedure. The trouble is that turning away from Darter turns directly toward Dace. Claggett has been watching. The starboard column is swinging toward him, closing the range, feeding itself into his firing solution. At 5:56, Dace fires 6 torpedoes at the lead ship of the approaching column. Claggett believes he is shooting at a Congo-class battleship. He is not. The target is the heavy cruiser Maya. Same class as Atago, approximately 1,000 men aboard. 4 torpedoes hit. Maya rolls over and goes down in 7 minutes. 336 men die. Claggett sweeps his periscope across the scene. Japanese destroyers are firing in every direction. The water around Atago still burns. Maya is going. He calls out to everyone in the conning tower, "It looks like the 4th of July out there. One is sinking and the other is burning. The Japs are firing all over the place. What a show." Then he turns the periscope toward the next target. "Stand by for a set-up," he says. The Japanese destroyers drop depth charges. Both submarines go deep and absorb the attack. Neither takes significant damage. The Japanese are firing at guesses. The clock reads 5:56. 32 minutes have passed since McClintock fired. 2 Japanese heavy cruisers are on the bottom of Palawan Passage. A third, Takao, struck by Darter's stern torpedoes, 3 boiler rooms flooded, 2 propeller shafts shattered, is dead in the water. 2 destroyers have been stripped from the strike force to escort her back to Brunei. 696 men are dead. The most powerful naval force Japan can put to sea has had its center column destroyed before it has even cleared the South China Sea, and the man commanding that force is swimming for his life. Kurita is hauled aboard the destroyer Kishinami. His fleet steams on without him. It takes 9 hours before he can transfer from Kishinami to Yamato and reassume command. 9 hours during which the fleet presses north on standing orders. The staff scattered, the flagship gone, command fallen to Vice Admiral Ugaki on Yamato. The fleet does not stop. It cannot. But it has no Kurita for 9 hours. Later, years later, Rear Admiral Tomiji Koyanagi, who was Kurita's chief of staff and who swam out of Palawan Passage alongside him, writes about what happened in a candid essay published in the United States Naval Institute Proceedings in 1953. He puts into words what the Japanese naval staff had always known and never acted on. They had always believed, he writes, that a Yamato-class battleship should have been the flagship for this operation. But Combined Fleet rejected the idea. Doctrine held that the commanding officer must ride a cruiser, the key ship of night surface engagements. Combined Fleet had never abandoned this traditional principle, and the sinking of Atago proved them wrong. Kurita was not on Atago because of bad luck. He was on Atago because his own Navy's doctrine demanded it. The same Yamato that had been steaming safely behind him, 60,000 tons of armored steel, effectively unsinkable, was the ship he should have been standing on. Japan's fleet doctrine had not been revised in 3 years of war that had rendered it obsolete at every point. 2 American submarines didn't just exploit a gap in Kurita's anti-submarine screen. They exploited a gap in the institutional logic of the Imperial Japanese Navy itself. The man who arrives on Yamato's bridge 9 hours later, exhausted, carrying the physical memory of the South China Sea, is the same man who will make the most debated tactical decision of the entire Pacific War in 2 days' time. Data and Dace don't leave. Takao is still out there, making for Brunei, under escort, slow and wounded. Both submarine commanders agree she has to be finished. In the afternoon of October 23rd, Data makes a submerged approach and is driven off by the screening destroyers before she can fire. McClintock notes the failure. He plans for that night. There is a problem he has not been able to account for. Data hasn't surfaced since before the attack. Her navigational plot, the running calculation of position that every submarine depends on, is now more than 24 hours old. She is dead reckoning through the most reef-studded waters in the South China Sea without being able to verify where she actually is. She is navigating on math and memory in hostile waters, in darkness. At 2200 on October 23rd, Takao gets underway again. McClintock plans an end-around, a fast surface run to get ahead of the cruiser and attack from her bow. He allows a margin of 7 miles around Bombay Shoal, a coral reef on the western side of the passage. He estimates the current at approximately 1 knot. He is wrong by 1/4 of a knot. At 0005 on October the 24th, USS Data, moving at 17 knots through the tropical darkness, rides up onto Bombay Shoal. The forward draft goes to 9 feet. She is on coral in the middle of dangerous ground. She cannot move, and she is 300 miles from any friendly port. Dace responds immediately. She lies to 50 yards off Data's beam while Data's crew attempts to back off the reef, dumps fuel to lighten the bow, waits for the tide. Nothing works. A Japanese destroyer closes to 12,000 yards, appears to ready its guns, and then, inexplicably, turns away and rejoins Takao. At 2:45, Dace passes a messenger line across 50 yards of open water. Sailors cross between the submarines in rubber boats in the darkness, carrying nothing but themselves, leaving behind 3 war patrols of accumulated belongings. McClintock is the last man off. He watches the demolition charges fire at 4:55. They fail. The hull holds. Dace fires her remaining torpedoes at Data. They strike the reef and explode short. She pumps 21 4-inch shells into the wreck. A Japanese aircraft forces both submarines under before more can be done. In the days that follow, USS Rock is called in and fires 10 torpedoes. Same result. USS Nautilus arrives and delivers 55 6-inch shells into the carcass. By Nautilus's own assessment, the draft is down to 4 feet. She is firing at the reef. Data does not sink. Before any of that begins, a Japanese boarding party reaches the wreck. The crew has destroyed the electronics, the codes, the navigation equipment, but the hull is intact. Part of the classified technical library survives. Japanese naval intelligence recovers it. The submarine that fired the most consequential torpedoes of the Battle of Leyte Gulf has also handed the enemy an intelligence windfall. McClintock is not held responsible. The finding is that what happened on Bombay Shoal was the compounding of small errors under conditions of extreme operational pressure, and that the grounding was one of those unfortunate losses that war exacts. His crew is saved. Every last man. He brings one thing off Data. Not his wife's photograph. Not his watch. Her favorite ashtray. My wife always said I'd have been more popular, he noted in an interview years later, if I'd rescued her picture instead of that ashtray. Kurita presses on. On October 24th, his battered center force enters the Sibuyan Sea. American carrier aircraft attack in waves. The super battleship Musashi, 60,000 tons, the largest ship in the world, absorbs 19 torpedo hits and 17 bombs before she rolls over and goes down. The rest of the force passes through San Bernardino Strait during the night of October 24th and emerges into the Philippine Sea. On the morning of October 25th, Kurita's ships fall on the American escort carriers and destroyers off the island of Samar. A handful of thin-skinned ships, completely outgunned, destroyers and destroyer escorts and slow carriers built on merchant hulls. They should be destroyed in an hour. Kurita breaks off the action and withdraws. He turns the center force around and leads it back through San Bernardino Strait. Historians have argued about that decision ever since. Some reconstruct it from tactical confusion, misidentified targets, failed communications, the conviction that American submarines and aircraft were converging from every direction. Others note the degradation of the force, the collapse of the coordinated plan, the 2 days of unrelenting air attack that preceded those final hours. All of these things are true. None of them, individually or together, fully explains the withdrawal. What the record allows us to say is this. Kurita arrived at Samar physically depleted, carrying the weight of 2 days that had included being thrown into the South China Sea, 9 hours of recovery aboard a destroyer, and watching Musashi go down from Yamato's bridge. He arrived at the moment of decision already diminished. How much of what happened off Samar on October 25th was decided in the water of Palawan Passage on October 23rd? We cannot say with certainty. We only know the two events are connected in ways that history cannot fully untangle. Kurita survived the war. He gave sparse answers to American interrogators after the surrender. He died in 1977. He never fully explained the withdrawal, and he was never pressed into one. The Atago lies in 1,800 meters of water in Palawan Passage. Maya is close by. Takao was towed to Singapore, declared unrepairable, surrendered to the British in September 1945, sunk as a target ship in 1946, the only ship of her class to outlast the war, and she never fired another shot in it. Claggett brought Darter's crew safely to Australia. Both boats received the Navy Unit Commendation. McClintock was awarded the Navy Cross in February 1945 and persuaded Admiral King himself to authorize the transfer of his entire Darter crew together to a new submarine, USS Menhaden, so they could go on fighting together. He lived to 89. He died in 2002 in Marquette, Michigan. USS Darter sat on Bombay Shoal for decades. A Navy salvage party arrived in 1951 and detonated the torpedoes remaining in her forward room, blowing off the bow. By 1998, her deteriorated remains could still be seen at low tide, a rusting outline lying on the coral. As of 2023, there is no visible evidence of the wreck above the surface. She has subsided completely into the reef. The submarine that spotted Japan's last fleet, that transmitted the most important contact reports of the Pacific War, that sank the flagship of the center force in 18 minutes and crippled a second cruiser before the minute hand had moved, has simply disappeared into the place where the nautical charts printed their oldest warning. It turned out to be dangerous for everyone.